I always look at the N64 and like, wow, people are saying the N64 is old. What does that mean about me?
So, I have been watching your videos for a while now, 3 years, I think, because, let's see, your first video that I saw, it was late at night, and I was looking for just something to like help me go to sleep, and I love Banjo Kazooie. I love Banjo Kazooie so much. It was one of those games. Just as I was growing up, my brother played it, and so I wanted to play it, and then one of your videos popped up, and it was your Banjo-Tooie retrospective. And I just thought it was amazing. And here, like 3 years later, you've put out so much good content. So my first question for you is just like, how did you get started doing this in the first place?
Yeah, so I mean, CloudConnection is the most recent video venture I've done, but I've been making videos semi-professionally for, quite a long time. I started earnestly making videos back in like 2006. So really, honestly, not long after I first discovered YouTube. And this was when I was about 13 years old, started a channel, just started making these stupid little edits, all that stuff. And that was, made several channels since then and started CloudConnection. Technically, CloudConnection, the actual channel, so the YouTube account started in 2013, but didn't really start making gaming videos until 2018. So it was my last year of college, my senior year, and I was a member of our college's radio station, and they had a recording booth. So I thought, okay, well, I don't have the equipment myself, but they have it, and I've always wanted to do those kind of videos like Normal Boots was doing, a lot of them Hidden Block back then. So I was like, I want to try that.
I had a suspicion that would be the inspiration, because I feel like, that was me too. I was just like, oh my gosh, Peanut Butter Gamer is so awesome. And they were a big one. Some Call Me Johnny was probably the biggest inspiration, I think. But I was like, I want to do something like that. And so just recorded the first few scripts. I think like the first video was like top 10 Mario spin-off games. Uploaded that in March 2018, and just kind of did a bunch of stuff that year. Once I got out of college, got my own microphone, started, just pumping out videos, and still doing that 5 years later. Yeah, and it seems like you're doing a really good job. Yeah, because some of your videos, you definitely hit some success. Because, just with the Banjo-Tooie one that I mentioned, it's like that one's got almost 200,000 views. And I know you have some others that have just like really got some attention.
Yeah, it's crazy. The Banjo was definitely the first one that really sort of took off. And by took off, I mean like the first day of the Banjo Kazooie video got like 100 views, and that was that was what I considered impressive. I probably had 100 subs by that point, but it was definitely like wow, this is taking off. And now, not to toot my own horn, but I get 100 views on a video a day pretty regularly. If it's not getting that in 24 hours, I have done something horribly wrong, or YouTube's messed up.
No, I get that. Yeah, you totally deserve it, man.
No, thank you very much.
So what got you into playing video games in the first place? Or we're going even further back now. What got you into playing video games? I know, like, for me, it was, again, as I mentioned earlier, it was like my brother. I just watched him play, and I was like, oh, I want to do what he's doing.
Yeah, no, it was a similar thing. For me, it was my parents. I'm actually the oldest child, so I would have been the one who developed that gaming hobby first. And my parents actually had an NES, and I was born in '96, so definitely far past the NES's prime. But that's what they had. That's what they grew up on, essentially. My parents were never huge gamers, and by like 2006, they were essentially done with it, which was fine because, me and my brother were super into it by then. So yeah, just playing a bunch of that. we also had, in addition to an NES, we had an N64, and the family would play on that a lot. Super Mario 64 was definitely the big family game. Maybe sometimes we'd play Mario Kart. But other than that, everything that we had, including, Banjo-Tooie, Donkey Kong 64. Occasionally we'd rent like Star Fox 64, Yoshi Story. That was all me and my brother just playing that and absolutely loving it. So that was really where it started, I think. Me and my brother playing all the time. We'd have friends who would have their consoles. We were strictly a Nintendo household until I got the Xbox 360. So that was like at least like 10 to 12 years.
Right.
So
I'm pretty sure it was the same thing for me. I think we were strictly Nintendo, and then an Xbox 360 happened, and then I had a brief venture where I was like, okay, now Halo's cool, and I'm going to play that.
And you know what it was? It was because Nuts and Bolts came out on the 360. And I was like, okay, I love Banjo so much, I have to get the Xbox 360 now. Right. And I was like, but that's just the kind of person I was. Like, whatever seemed interesting to me at the time. And I was 12 years old when Nuts and Bolts came out. I already knew, I loved the series so much. And that was at Christmas. I think the Xbox, or the game rather, launched in that November. So I had already kind of heard the sentiment that, this game is radically different and people weren't liking it. I still picked it up anyway.
Yeah. So what were your thoughts on Nuts and Bolts though? Because I've heard it's one of those games where when it came out, I've heard a lot of criticism. A lot of people didn't like it. Especially just because it's such a twist on the Banjo formula. But what were your thoughts? Because I've noticed a sort of like reappreciation almost, especially like when you look at Tears of the Kingdom. Have you been following Tears of the Kingdom at all?
A little bit. I've been watching the trailers. I haven't so much been like seeing what people are saying about it. And I know it leaked and people are talking about that, but haven't seen anything like that.
Right. Yeah, I've been trying really hard not to see anything.
Yeah.
I was on the Tears of the Kingdom Reddit, and I was like, I have to get off. I don't want to be spoiled. It's wild out there. But after the gameplay presentation of Tears of the Kingdom, they showcased this kind of like building ability, and I saw everyone was just like, Nuts and Bolts. It's like they're stealing from Nuts and Bolts. I think there's a little bit more of an appreciation now. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so again, I played that game when it came out, and I was younger, maybe not so much like the sort of just bitter person I became as a young adult, especially like 16 to 18 year old. So I played it before that. If I had played it then, I definitely would have been like, this isn't what I remember. I don't want to play this right now. Honestly, I liked it that back then just because I liked a lot of things. I like it now, not as much as I did when I first played it, but I like it now because I think, it did try something completely new. It is completely different. And if you are just into Banjo for the platforming, you're not going to enjoy it. I understand that. I think just as a game and as a unique concept, I think it executes it really well. I appreciate that aspect, even if it's not what people were expecting. And I understand part of it is because the first trailer made it seem like it was going to be another platformer collectathon. And the fact that it wasn't that, I can understand why people would be upset. For me, I've just always kind of, it's not what we wanted, but it's fun. And like I saw that Tears for the Kingdom, I saw that building, I was like, yeah, they nuts and bolts it. Although technically,
like
someone pointed this out.
They nuts and bolts
it. Although technically, someone did point it out. Technically, it should be they Kingdom Hearts it because of the gummy ship. That was basically Nuts and Bolts years before Nuts and Bolts. Now I've never played Kingdom Hearts, so I don't have that. I didn't know that was a thing.
Right, me neither. But I do know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so technically, that's what really started it, and I'm sure there was some obscure, car building game way before then that technically is the first time to do it. Anyway, but yeah, that's why I like Nuts and Bolts.
There you go. This is slowly turning into just a gaming history podcast.
I know my history of games a little bit.
That's one thing my dad always makes fun of me because I'll like connect like memories in the past with like the release of a video game or the date or like My wife was born in 96 when the N64 came out. Oh, wait, but you said you were born in 96 as well, right?
That's true, yeah. So I always look at the N64 and like, wow, people are saying the N64 is old. What does that mean about me?
Oh, I know, aging sucks.
Yeah.
But anyway, what are you playing right now?
Well, I've just I'm working as far as like the next videos I'm working on. I've just played Grand Theft Auto 4. So
interesting.
Replay that. I've played it before, but replay that again. I'm playing through Link's Awakening right now, so getting a little bit of a retro kick. I just and
are
as
you
far
playing it
as
on
just
Switch, or are you playing it on the?
I am playing on Switch, yeah. Okay. So experiencing that for the first time, which is kind of cool. And I'm also about to play. I have not started it yet, but I am about to play RE4 remake.
Okay.
I've wanted to check that out. Like the Resident Evil remakes, and I haven't played the originals of 2 or 3, just the remakes of them, and I really, really like them. I have played the original RE4 because I did a video on it, and I'm really excited to check out 4 remake, and I've heard great things about it.
Yeah, did you play Resident Evil when you were younger, or is this like a newer thing?
No, this is strictly a newer thing. I actually, like, maybe within the past year and a half, just started playing it. First it was 2 remake, then 7 and Village, and then I've slowly just been catching up. And 3 remake as well after 2 remake. 4 was the first one I sort of went backwards to discover, and I have Resident Evil remake on the GameCube and Resident Evil 0. So those might be the next ones that I check out. Yeah.
Resident Evil 2 remake. So I had a friend when that came out. He just invited people over so that they would play it, but you just like turn off all the lights, like, and just in an attempt to scare them, which I just think was brilliant. So do you have any plans for Resident Evil videos?
I'd love to do more. Yeah. I'm not sure which one I would do next. I think it would be RE remake, just because that's the one I'm most excited to check out. I think that could be a good for the Breaking the Backlog series that I do, which is why I'm playing through Link's Awakening. I think RE remake would be a great candidate for that, because it's old enough. A lot of people are familiar with the game. I'm not, so I'm have that complete fresh perspective. And it would be the first Resident Evil game I play that still has the old school camera system, because everything I've played has been more modern. So that'll be really interesting for me to get to experience that for the first time.
Yeah. Going back, you said, so you're playing Link's Awakening. I'm not playing Link's Awakening, but I'm playing A Link to the Past for the first time. Have you played that?
I did. I played that for the first time a few years ago, and I streamed my first playthrough. That was really fun. Yeah.
Yeah. And I too, I don't know if you're playing Link's Awakening for just like Tears of the Kingdom hype or whatever, or just maybe Zelda's on the brain, but I'm also playing Wind Waker, which I've never beat. And I gotta say, that game is really good. I cannot believe I've slept on that game for so long. It's got what do you think?
Well, that's another one I have not played. I actually have not played a lot of Zelda. I grew up with Ocarina of Time and absolutely adored that game. I've played Majora's Mask, as I said. I played Link to the Past, and I'm playing Link's Awakening now. Besides that, and I've played a little bit of Skyward Sword. I beat Breath of the Wild. In fact, the reason why I am playing Link's Awakening, like you mentioned, Zelda on the Mind and Tears of the Kingdom coming out, I did want to make a Breath of the Wild video. And I played it to release it in May for, to tie into Tears of the Kingdom. Actually, originally for the 6th anniversary, release it in March for the 6th anniversary of Breath of the Wild. Missed that completely. So I was like, okay, Tears of the Kingdom's coming out. Let's release Breath of the Wild for that.
Yeah.
I started looking at the script and I'm like, this is not coming together. I can't think of a thing to say about Breath of the Wild. Which is not I love the game. The game is great. I just don't think there's anything I can say about it right now that just doesn't feel like I'm repeating myself. I really have to play it again and play a lot more of it. I think to make a video.
I think sometimes when it comes to like content creation and making these video game retrospectives and analysis videos, it's like, how do I say what hasn't been said before? You know, because it's like, you know, there's such a huge pool of videos of people talking about Breath of the Wild. It's like, how do I make it my own? Is that a challenge that you've had when making other videos of yours?
It very much is, especially when you are covering popular topics, you know, popular series. Like I've wanted to, I talked about Mario 64 earlier. That's a video that, you know, I know if I make that, and I want to make that really badly, because it's a game I love. It's an essential part of my childhood. Mm-hmm. But how do I do that without just repeating what everyone else has said about it? You know, the game's been talked to death. And when I'm making a video on something, I don't watch other people's content on it in, you know, leading up to it. I don't try to use that as a springboard for ideas or anything, just because I feel like if I do that, I'm going to just be like, well, I can't talk about this because, you know, this person talked about it, or this person talked about this. I think you really kind of have to, at least my theory on it is, you have to approach it in a bubble. You have to kind of isolate yourself from that, at least as you're creating it. And then if someone has made a really great video on it that I know, like, oh, I enjoy this person's work, I know I'm going to enjoy them talking about Mario 64, but I can't view it right now until this is done, and then I'll finally support them. Or what I'll do is I'll just click on the video, mute my computer, and just walk away for a bit so I can give them the watch time, give them all that, you know, help support them, but I just can't pay attention to it right now.
Right. Yeah, and you've made videos on, you know, some of these big series, but you've also made some videos about things I've never heard of before, like Rocket on Wheels. On Wheels.
Yes.
I
think that's something I like to do now, especially, is, you know, I've grown the audience enough, and I've grown to sort of just, however small I may be in the grand scheme of things, I have an audience, and I want to talk about things that I really love that maybe people have never heard of. I want to talk to my audience about these little things that people don't know about, like Rocket, as you mentioned. Or a few years ago, I did retrospectives on games like I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, which is a game that is the very opposite of mainstream. It is in a very niche genre. It's exclusively for PC, so if you're strictly a console gamer, you probably would have never even heard of it. And it's really also a really dark game. It has a lot of intense themes that would turn people away. So it is very much this is not a low-hanging fruit at all. And I still wanted to make a video on it because I thought the game was really interesting, and that resonates with a lot of people. And I also find it really interesting that the video that is performed the best out of what I've done so far is on Papers, Please, which is a popular game. I understand people, know about it. I understand people to hear in-depth discussions about it. But I had no idea it was going to resonate that much with people, that it actually recently crossed the 500,000 view barrier, which is just a really great number, especially for a channel that is not at 20K subs yet. That's a really good ratio of views to subs. But it's also just, it's wild to me that that's the video that took off about Papers, Please. It's not like it's something that is so against what people are so against things like Banjo and Donkey Kong, which I am known for. Those do really well. But it's just interesting that that's the one that took off.
It's like sometimes you just got to wonder. It's like, what in the algorithm happened here? What, and because and obviously you deserve it. You make great content, but it is weird because you would think it's going to be going to be Banjo, it's going to be Donkey Kong. And I think it is those things for you, but it's like, why did this in particular just take off?
It's really strange. And yeah, you figure some of it just has to be luck. You figure some of it is just, oh, well, let's just put this video on the spotlight because why the hell not? With a game like Papers, Please, which is very, I don't want to say that it's like reactionary or anything like that to what was going on at the time, but I think, as events in the world, do occur, people do sort of have this sort of, how do we treat each other as nations, as a people? And I think that just sort of resonates. That's just sort of what's on people's minds right now. So maybe they turn to a game like Papers, Please to just be like, oh, this is reminding me of such and such. Or maybe that's just YouTube algorithms connecting like, okay, content about, insert political disaster, insert, countrywide thing here. And it connects the dots eventually in its neural network to say, oh, this is semi-related to Papers, Please. Even if that's not correct at all. But it realized like, oh, content about X is popular. We should boost Y because, it's semi-related to X. It's weird how it works. And I definitely appreciate that video gets the most attention, but I could never have predicted that would happen.
Right.
Not for that video.
So that's your most successful video, right?
As far as views, yes, that's the most one. It's gotten at least double over the next one, which would be Conker's Bad Fur Day, which again, because that's related to Banjo and Donkey Kong. I knew, and that video was a big success from the beginning. I knew that one was going to be popular, and it has been.
So you have these videos that are getting a bunch of views, but do you have a particular video that you would say you're most proud of?
I mean, the Banjo stuff sticks out just because I was so passionate about working on that. And I think it turned out great. I really love actually my Limbo and Inside video. That one I think is pretty underrated. Just because that was one of the first times I really like did analysis rather than just being like, just discussing the game or the gameplay, because let's face it, with Limbo and Inside, there isn't a ton of gameplay to dissect. You really need to go into the themes of it. That was one of the first times I did that. That and the Eye of No Mouth video, which is another one that, another one that I...
How dare you?
I'm sorry. Sorry, I had some pork carnitas for dinner, so I'm a little bit burpy.
That sounds awesome, though.
It was pretty good. Anyway, so the Eye of No Mouth video, that's another one that I'm really happy with how that turned out, because it is a darker game, a game that you need to treat seriously. You need to treat it with reverence because it talks about some pretty heavy-handed stuff. And I thought doing that gracefully and not trying to get too big about it, if you know what I mean, was an interesting challenge. But I love how that turned out. So,
on the other end, do you have a video? And I think this is the more interesting question. Do you have a video that you're least proud of?
There are a lot of moments in videos that I've done that I feel like I could have, that I could have handled better. Like the nuts and bolts video, to go back to that topic. I think overall I did a fair job, addressing the complaints about it while also trying to put a positive spin about it. But there were definitely some moments where I feel like I leaned a bit too far in accusing the people who dislike the game of something. And that's not what I try to be anymore. That video is a few years old right now. I try to be very positive. I try to be very, understanding. I at least just try to accept, even if there's a view on a game that I don't hold, I at least try to be like, okay, well, people believe this. That's fine. They're allowed to believe that. So there's been a lot of moments like that where I tend to go a little more extreme, especially in the older videos on, people say this, but I think they're wrong. I don't try to do that anymore. So it's moments like that that I'm not proud of. The nuts and bolts is one. I think Mighty Number 9 is another video where I'm like, just because I could have executed that better. A lot of that was regurgitating what people thought about the game at the time. And I'm not a Mega Man player, so I didn't really have that perspective on it either. As a fan of the series that came before it, I didn't have that perspective, so I had no business talking about it. And like half of that video, 40% of that video was just talking about the development, which it didn't need to be that long. People already knew about it by that time. I was, again, going back to what we were talking about, I wasn't adding anything new to the conversation, just, again, parroting what people have said about it. So that's what I'm not particularly fond of myself.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's got to be hard. I mean, people change so much in 3 years. You know, like everyone does, especially like if you're in your 20s. You know, it's like there's so much change. Like if you have 3-5 years worth of videos, you know, counting your other works, it's like, yeah, you're going to put out some stuff that it's like you're going to cringe at sometimes. You know, it's just a part of it. And I think a lot of people have a hard time, even myself. Like I've put out some videos before, and then it's like some 6 months go by, and then I look back and I'm just like, there's like something about it I didn't like, you know, like one thing. And it's like enough for me to just delete it. I'm just like, I don't want it. Yeah. So I think that's a struggle for a lot of people. So
sure, and I definitely feel that way. Like as I'm working on any video, there's just always a point where I'm like, is this really good enough for me? And you know, I think holding yourself to some level of quality is important. That's kind of, you have to function like that. But it can't overtake, you know, you can't rest on that too much. You can't think about that too much. You have to push forward. You have to view the final product for what it is. As I'm like one of the worst parts about making a video is assembling the audio once I've recorded myself and actually splicing the audio together. In that moment, just hearing myself, my thoughts that aren't put together right, they have, the pacing of the video hasn't been established, but just hearing my just loose sentences essentially that I've just said, and you know, hearing your own voice is never pleasant. And just hearing that in a very unorganized manner is just like, I do not like doing that. That's the worst part of editing a video. See,
that's fun to hear from you, because in my opinion, you have like such a great voice for the content that you make, or just voiceovers in general. You know, I have a very like nasally small voice. You have like a really great voiceover. And you kind of mentioned a little bit of that, the process of you putting a video together. Like, what is the process of you, like from conception to the final product? Like what is happening? Because you mentioned just like, do you just record like your thoughts and just organize it? Like just organize the audio into where it's more cohesive, or is it more scripted, or what do you do?
So my videos are almost 100% scripted. Like I'd say like 99% of everything that I've ever said in a video was written down in a Google Docs. That's what I use to write everything. You know, I write a bunch of loose notes as I'm playing a game. I expand those notes into ideas that essentially just become the paragraphs that I write. So just everything I say is scripted. Record that all, and usually in one batch. Sometimes if it's a large script, I split it up into 2 sessions. And then, yeah, just kind of go through the entire audio and just take by take, just pull out, okay, put this line where it needs to go, put this line where it needs to go. It's very methodical, very like it's very assembly line, like almost at that stage. And I know some people, especially when they're working on larger projects rather, they'll record like the first part of a script and assemble the audio for that, then put the video in and take it, you know, take the video chunk by chunk. I've always been let's write the entire script, then record all the voiceover, then put it together. I sort of do it piece by piece, and so just sort of layer everything down. Just sort of layer down every foundation, I guess, for the next part of it. That's how it's been since I first started it. I think just out of necessity at first, because I couldn't use the recording booth at our college radio station for that long. Yeah. And I've just sort of adopted that mindset since. Sometimes I break that if I have to, like if I still need to finish up part of a script, but know that I can record the voiceover now for the first half of it. I'll do that. But it has been very, let's get everything done for this part of it first before we move on. It's very, like, again, methodical like that.
What about for a video like, and I've been excited to ask about this video because I just want to know, like, why it happened. And that's, can you beat Banjo-Tooie without backtracking? I love that video. That's like up my alley. I'm like, that's kind of weird and awesome. But why?
Well, I mean, the real reason why, and the sort of boring functional reason why, is because I needed to fill a content gap. I wasn't doing reviews or retrospectives at the time. I was sort of taking a break from that. So I was like, okay. And I did the, like, rating every Banjo Kazooie level. And as I was thinking about that, I was thinking, like, I could do another Banjo style video talking about the backtracking in Banjo-Tooie, which is a topic I've always been, just thinking about as someone who loves that game. It just sort of lives and breathes discussion about that game.
Yeah.
That's just been such a pervasive topic. And, I think I might have been watching a lot of challenge videos at the time. I know that, challenge videos like that then are nothing new. A lot of other creators have done stuff like that. And I was like, well, I could do something like that for Banjo-Tooie and backtracking. And I got to say, putting that together and figuring out the route and, digging out like a PDF of a Banjo-Tooie strategy guide just to make sure I was covering everything correctly and not forgetting anything. Doing that was some of the most fun I've ever had putting a script together. It was one of the few times where I had to create visual aids for myself. Some of them didn't make it into the video. It was strictly for me to reference materials. That's something I never have to do with just putting my thoughts on a video game together. But it was really interesting to do that. And obviously people really liked that and directly inspired me to do another challenge video that how many times do you need the tag barrel in Donkey Kong 64? Again, just same idea. Like, I've heard that as a negative criticism so much. Is it because that's the thing I think is really interesting. Like, a lot of challenge videos just seem like, well, it just seems like a self-imposed challenge. Like, can you beat Mario 64 without touching a coin? Like, nobody asked for that. Nobody has wondered if you could do that, or maybe people have, but it's not been like a common thing. The backtracking in Banjo-Tooie is such a in-depth, it's something that people have been talking about for years since that game came out. It has been what people call a problem, and I was really curious to find out, is it really a problem? Or is it just something that people latched onto because they had to go through with it? They had to deal with it as when they were playing it. So that to me just gave it that extra layer of interest that kind of elevates it above the typical challenge video flair. Not that I'm dissing challenge videos. I actually like them quite a bit. I wouldn't have made one if I didn't like them.
No, I'm definitely one of those people. I saw Can You Beat Banjo-Tooie without backtracking, and it was like one of the quickest clicks I've ever had, because I'm just like, yep, I don't know why, but that is what I want to watch. And now I've always been on the side of like, well, let me preface with, if I was to pick Banjo Kazooie or Banjo-Tooie, I am a Banjo-Tooie person. Not that it has to be a binary choice. Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
Now
okay. I'm in now.
So I've always thought, I'm like, why is the backtracking such a criticism? Because I've never thought about it as a bad thing. I've almost not only do you not have to do a lot of it, but I enjoyed it. And I think a big part of that, and I'm kind of curious if you agree with me. I've always viewed Banjo-Kazooie as more of a collectathon, and then Banjo-Tooie as almost more of an adventure game. Because I find it structured, I mean, obviously you still collect things, but it is structured a lot differently. And it was funny because after I beat Breath of the Wild, going back to Zelda, which was my first Zelda game I ever beat, I played Ocarina of Time shortly after, which is a game that I used to crap on all the time, but ends up it's a good game. But I finished Ocarina and I was like, you know what? I was like, this felt more like Banjo-Tooie than I thought it was going to, which is one of the most bizarre comparisons ever. It's like, why would you do that? But it's just because Banjo-Tooie felt like such an adventure with the interconnecting worlds, with the overworld being just like this huge space that you can explore. And so I just categorize those two games differently. And I like adventure. I like backtracking. I like Metroid. If you like Metroid, you have to like backtracking.
Yeah, it's platforming Metroidvania, which is a weird thing to say because a lot of Metroidvanias are also platformers. But I agree with you 100%. Like it is much more of an adventure game. If maybe it's not an adventure game itself, I would still define it first and foremost as a platformer. Yeah. But a lot, maybe the platforming is not as much as a focus as it was in other platformers at the time. But even Banjo-Kazooie, like that's not like a strictly platforming based platformer. You look at that compared to Mario 64, and Mario 64 is a physics based 100%. Like that is about moving and jumping. Kazooie is about collecting. Tooie is about collecting in a sense too, but you're right. It is much more of a grand adventure. It is much more of a, it's not a level to level platformer. I think maybe people tend to treat it as such, which is sort of understandable. Like the design of Tooie is sort of set up where it sort of wants to be this huge big world with all these sub areas, but also be a level to level platformer. So I understand why maybe that doesn't click with everybody. It's certainly for me, I didn't like really realize that that's the reason why I enjoyed Banjo-Tooie so much and why I didn't mind the backtracking. That's something I didn't realize until I wrote the script for my Tooie retrospective. I was like, oh, you know what? It is because it feels like such a big adventure. It feels like a more interconnected game. That's why I love it, because it was designed that way. Not because it was just, Kazooie, but bigger and better, but because they tried something, a lot more holistic of an experience rather than just, here's 9 levels in Banjo-Kazooie, go beat them, and when you have enough stuff, go beat the game. I like that Tooie evolved that quite a bit. It maybe isn't for everybody, but I love it to death.
Yes. Yeah.
And I love the first game too. I want to make that absolutely clear. I love Kazooie. Kazooie is outstanding. But Tooie is always just going to have the higher, just be on the higher pedestal for me personally.
I think it was when I was doing like, there's so many areas in Zelda games where it's like, oh, I can't progress here because I don't have this item. Now I have to go get that item in the future and then come back to this at some point. I've never seen that as problematic, so I don't see why it becomes problematic in 2A. But we've almost successfully spent 60% of our time talking about Banjo in some capacity.
Yeah, that's just what's going to happen when you talk to me for any amount of time. I'm going to bring Banjo-Kazooie into the conversation.
No, it's amazing.
If it doesn't happen, I'm going to force it. That's just my one card that I have is like, hey, but you haven't heard about Banjo-Kazooie?
So you mentioned Mario 64. Obviously a great game. Did you hear of this indie movie that came out recently called the Super Mario Brothers movie?
I don't watch independent cinema. Yes, I've not yet seen the Mario movie. I think just because it came out 4 days before we and as you know this because we had to schedule the interview around it. Before I moved out from Massachusetts to Minnesota, and obviously that took a couple of days, so I couldn't see it opening week, and it's just been getting everything set up around here. I want to see it. I really do want to see it. I just have not had the time yet.
Right.
To get out there.
I won't stick onto that topic because obviously you haven't seen it, but I will say from my perspective, I think if you like Mario in basically any capacity, like I think you'll love this movie. But I also think if you are someone that is obsessed with Mario, it's like it gets that much better just because there's so many random things that you're going to recognize. Anyway.
Well, I even just from watching like one of the clips that they posted, just seeing every little bit of detail they put into it, and I expected that was the route that they would take, that they would really lean into Mario references, not so much maybe in the plot, but definitely in all the background details. That was the vibe I was getting from the trailers, and knowing that is what the direction the movie took, at least on on the how does it represent the Mario franchise front. I think that is ultimately the best call. But again, that's coming from me who has not seen the movie yet. I will. Yeah. Trust me on that.
I think it's amazing. Yeah, any Nintendo fan, I think, and this is not a spoiler, but, obviously it's a Nintendo movie, so when the movie starts, you get like a Nintendo intro or whatever. And I won't say what it is, but it's like, it's surreal. Like when I was in the theater, I was like, this is a Nintendo movie. Like, what the heck? Like, and do you have anything that you would want to see? Because obviously, so we've established the Mario movie. It's made over $1 billion now. Which is like, congratulations, Nintendo. That's an amazing thing. What do you think the precedent is that's being set by this movie? Like, what do you think we're going to see next?
It's interesting because I fully expect. I was not sure like what to think of like the movie when the first few details were released. Obviously that cast reveal became such a huge meme that I'm sure a lot of people just wrote it off there and then. And I laughed at that. My brother and I watched that direct when Chris Pratt's face came on screen. I mean, we just instantly just started laughing, and we were like, yeah, okay, this movie's not going to be stellar, is it? But just seeing that, seeing all the images, all the trailers, and I was just like, wow, they're really handling this. Looks like they're handling it really well. I think this could be a big hit, even if the movie itself is whatever. And I'll say that Illumination movies are typically like, I'm not a fan at all. It's just not they're just not a company whose movies I enjoy. But I also think that they were a great fit just because their animation is very cartoony, and B, it's just stylistically, like, it fits so well with, and it is very clear from the trailers that Nintendo had a lot of input into how the movie should look and feel, and how should the Mario Brothers act, how should they look, how should they act, what should they do. I think that's very important. And I guess, I'd really love to see, more animated stuff with other franchises. I have a feeling that they're going to stick to their, if this does lead to more stuff, I think they are going to stick to their core franchises. Like I would imagine Zelda would be one, Kirby maybe. But it is interesting. I'm really curious to see what this leads to. I have a feeling that a second Mario movie is basically in the bag. I haven't heard that they've greenlit anything yet, but I have to imagine that they're going to want to follow up on this with another one. Just because, I think like you said, it broke $1 billion at the box office. It'd be stupid not to capitalize on that.
Yeah, I know. It's fine. I'll see articles with like titles like, will Nintendo make something after the Mario movie? Like, what's next? And so it's like, duh. Like,
yeah, it's just, like, of course they are. It's really, you really should be asking, like, what are they gonna do? What are they gonna do next?
And so I'm excited. I really am. I'm really hoping for Zelda. Like, I'm not even like the most huge Zelda fan ever, but like, I think that would be awesome. Though you'd have to make Link talk.
I think something, I was sort of thinking about this a few days ago, just like, if they made a Zelda movie, what would it look like? And I have a feeling that maybe they would do something like a sort of origin story for Hyrule where Link isn't even a part of it. And that way they wouldn't have to get a voice actor for Link.
There you go.
Just to write around that problem. I don't know if that's a direction they would take. But, you know, I think with that, and also like Detective Pikachu was another big, and I know Pokemon is sort of a separate, it's its own thing now. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily like a reflection of what Nintendo wants to do. But just having a big budget movie like that come out, and from what I understand, do pretty well. You know, I think like video game movies, just in general, maybe not even just Nintendo, video game movies could have a resurgence if people treat it correctly. You know, I think
absolutely
what Nintendo's done with the Mario movie has been, you know, a perfect step in the right direction. Detective Pikachu, I really enjoyed. You know, I think video game movies have a lot of potential. I think we're going to see quite a few in the next. And Sonic the Hedgehog too. Like those movies have been incredible successes. I think this is sort of we're looking at a golden age of video game movies, which is incredible. Which is incredible because, you know, you ask somebody like 5, 6, 7 years ago, like, you know, what do you think of video game movies? And they're just gonna be like, oh well, they're all horrible. And to be fair, you know, that would have been correct. But now me and
a friend of mine. His name's Brian. We were talking and we were like, and this was a few years ago. It still looked like comic book movies were still going to be like the biggest thing, but it does seem like they're kind of they're fading out at the moment. It seems like, and we were like, what's next? What comes after that? And we were throwing out like, it's either going to be anime to live action adaptation movies, or it's going to be video game movies. Like, because I think around that time, that's when Sonic, the first Sonic movie came out, which actually I did not see. But it was like, seen that one either. Yeah, but it was like, this is a video game movie that came out, and like, obviously the first trailer, everyone criticized the heck out of that, but when it came out, it actually was financially successful. So I was thinking like, okay, what precedent is that? Is it like, what's going to happen from there? And so I was guessing, still that it was going to be anime adaptations because, and I'm not even like I'm not like a huge anime guy, but there was like because there's the Death Note live action adaptation, which from what I hear was not good. But for some reason at the time I was like, this is it. We're going to start seeing more of this. But no, it looks like it's going to be video games. And I think Brian, he said, you know, I think comic book movies, like the reason that they got so popular or just even got created in the first place was because his generation, he said, or Gen X, the Gen Xers, like they took a hold of the movie industry. And so therefore, you know, comic book movies. And it seems like now with the millennials kind of taking their place within the movie industry, now we're seeing video games. And I'm all for that, man. That's what I want. I'm not complaining.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I think that's actually a really interesting point about the generational part of it, as you know, they're coming into the industry. I think that makes a lot of sense actually. And it's also understandable then, if you continue that train of thought, why video game movies like this are starting to become, you know, this sort of to get that crest, is because, you know, I think a lot of people in my generation, as someone who was sort of a millennial, I guess I'm I'm right at the tail end of it. But I definitely feel like we're a generation who I think still values like the creative side of anything. Like, you know, I think like our generation is not jaded enough that we're like, you know, oh, we have to focus on like, you know, movies that we know successfully do well. We can experiment a little more. We appreciate that. Which is why I think video game movies are doing so well right now. Part of the reason why, or at least why they're getting all these big budgets into it, is because we understand that these are huge things right now. Mario, of course, is like the biggest video game ever that isn't Pokemon. But Mario has such wide-reaching appeal, and everyone has at least, you know, has heard of Mario. So of course the movie's going to do well, and kids are going to enjoy it. I think
which is bizarre because he's like he's a short Italian plumber. Like, how is he the most like recognizable property? Like, it's so bizarre to me.
It is. It's so bizarre that this little man, this little
like Pikachu makes sense.
You know what it is? You know what it is? Because he's a white collar hero. I mean, sorry, blue collar hero. He's the working man who rose above all the adversity and has all the success. It is the perfect American success story.
There you go. The temptation to just put like American flag behind you and the national anthem playing as you were saying that, like, it's high. Anyway, so besides making great video game content and discussing Banjo-Tooie and movies, what does CloudConnection do for fun?
You know, CloudConnection is the sort of person who likes to take things easy when he's not working on. So, like right now, my situation is I do CloudConnection as part-time income. I consider it, a part-time job essentially. When I'm not doing that, I'm a writer. I'm a professional writer. I have a bunch of, I have a couple of freelance writing contracts that I'm filling out right now. It's all steady work, which is really nice. But that affords me the opportunity to stay at home a lot, which means that I can, I can sort of stay at CloudConnection home base and work on, CloudConnection at my own pace, which is really, really nice. But aside from that, I just sort of like to kick back and relax and just watch movies, listen to music. I'm listening to music or watching a video in the background, like basically every single moment of every single day. I've always got something on in the background. Just kicking back and absorbing a lot of media, and eventually at some point get off my butt and start creating stuff. But that's not CloudConnection related. I want to, if I had to choose a career, like I think it would be like a creative writer, a fiction writer, which I've done. I've published some stuff. But that's what now that I'm out here on my own and really independent from everything, I want to start really focusing on that. And,
okay, that's cool. How did you get into writing though? I have to ask now because that's cool.
Yeah, so as far as the creative writing side of it, which that's what came first, I came from wanting to be a film director, which that was, something I wanted to be when I latched on, when I was watching stuff as a kid, I latched on very early to the fact that that they're made by a team of people and that they have directors come in to shoot it and writers come in to write it. So I was like, I want to do that. I want to create stuff. And that, first of all, that is what eventually led to me learning how to edit videos, which is where CloudConnection came from. I think that passion, that early passion, that's where CloudConnection spawned from. But it was also eventually led to me like, I don't have the technical prowess to, edit a movie or shoot a movie, or I can't really do that. But I'd like to create something. Let me try the writing angle. And so just ever since, elementary school days, if I had free time, I might have been writing something or drawing something. I'm not really an artist anymore, but I would doodle every so often, like a lot of kids do. And realize okay, well, I know that when I'm, going into high school and going into college, I can't really, at least with the options that I had available, I can't really choose creative writing as a field to study. Pick some electives for that, but I went into professional writing instead. So learning how to write for businesses, learning how to write in an official capacity, which has served me well in my professional career. That's allowed me to have some sort of steady income while also doing YouTube work and, doing my own things as well, doing my own personal projects. So really it's just been like, I got to develop my writing trade somehow and, take inspiration from all the creative sources, really focus on that, but also learn, how to write for corporations, which is it's kind of an important tool. If you are writing as a professional, you have to be able to to set aside all the things you learn about creative writing and be like, okay, no, you have to write to a formula. You have to write to, the specifications that they want. So I've really kind of developed all around based on that, not losing sight of my creativity and that angle, but, laser focusing it as well.
Yeah. Hey, that's really interesting. That's like, and it shows through. I mean, in your creative writing, it's like you can tell that you have a talent for it, being able to organize your thoughts, articulate it in a way that's really pleasing. Mm-hmm. And so you wanted to become a film director? Okay, mm-hmm. So it's my anticipation that you will direct the Banjo-Tooie movie in 2035.
I mean, I would love to be involved in some capacity. I guess the onus then is on me to get my credentials high enough so that they will, publish a couple of novels or something, or publish a screenplay. So be like, hey, we know this person can write and has serious work under his belt and is a huge banjo fan. There you go. I guess that's I got to get cracking on that.
Oh, that's good. So now this is another pretty particular question. So what do you use to edit your videos? I do some like freelance videography and like motion graphics stuff. So I'm pretty I'm pretty immersed into the Adobe suite, everything's Premiere and After Effects. But I got to know, the people at home need to know what program do you use to edit your videos?
Yeah, so ever since the beginning, and not just of CloudConnection, but of me making videos on YouTube. Well, first it was Windows Movie Maker. That was like 2005. That's the first video editor I ever used. Then I migrated to, it was Sony Vegas. Mm-hmm. Now it's not Sony Vegas anymore. They sold it to Magix. But I've been using Vegas ever since I started like seriously making videos. And have not looked back. Vegas has been the only tool I've ever used. Well, I've touched Final Cut, but other than that, it's strictly been Vegas. And Vegas is not like the best video editor out there. I think you could even like compared to Adobe Premiere, and Adobe Premiere has its own issues, mostly with Adobe itself and the Creative Cloud. But as far as a video editing software, it's very powerful. I think Vegas is powerful, but it is a little more cumbersome, I think, to work with. But it's just what I'm used to. So it's Vegas all the way.
I was hoping you happen to pick like the one software I've not, like the one video editing software I've not worked with before, because I've worked with Windows Movie Maker, iMovie, yep. Final Cut, DaVinci Resolve, Premiere, After Effects. I went through a phase I thought DaVinci Resolve was like the greatest thing ever, but then I was like, immediately I was like, wait a second, like there's things that like Premiere just has some serious advantages over it, but it makes sense. I mean, DaVinci's free, but no, if you do like color correction or color grading, this could be the most uninteresting thing in the world. But if you do color correction or color grading, DaVinci has some great software that's free that you can do that with.
Yeah. I mean, I know Vegas is professional grade, so you can do a lot with it. If you're just assembling, YouTube videos where it is mostly just drop in footage, adjust the timing, and that's it, it's perfect for that. And that's really all I do. I don't do a lot of fancy edits. I don't do, things like that often. So really, I just need something to be able to just put a timeline together, and Vegas is perfect for that. So really, it's just a matter of I'm too stubborn to learn anything else, but also I don't need to learn anything else, at least not for the stuff that I'm creating right now.
Gotcha. Well, hey, if you ever need any motion graphics or anything done, I'll send you my reel. But I don't.
Please do.
Yeah, I don't have anything else for you as far as questions go. Is there anything else you want to say before we turn this thing off?
I think the only thing I have left to say is if you've enjoyed this interview and you'd like to see more of my content and hear my voice again, you can go to youtube.com/CloudConnection. Like, comment, and subscribe.
I agree with that statement. No, thank you so much for talking. I had a lot of fun.
This was great.
I don't have people to talk about banjo with. Okay, like I need. This is so I got to just take people from the internet and have conversations.
Absolutely, I'm always happy to talk about banjo with anybody.
Hey, thanks for listening to the interview. Make sure to check out my new single, 'Cause You, featuring Jackson Marcotte. And also, subscribe to me and CloudConnection if you haven't already.